Canadian Stroke Prevention Intervention Network, also known as CSPIN, is a project which has recently been funded by the Canadian Institutes of Health Research and the Heart and Stroke Foundation of Canada. And it is an exciting new collaboration between Population Health Research Institute and multiple other centers of excellence across Canada. And the main goal of this project is to develop new ways to prevent stroke in patients with atrial fibrillation. And it will do so by starting pilot and vanguard studies to address important strategies to prevent stroke. Now, CSPIN is building on a long heritage of Canadian excellence in atrial fibrillation and stroke research, but is really trying to strengthen the ties between these centers of excellence across the country. And in doing so, make it possible for investigators across Canada to tackle previously unanswerable questions. And I think this is a very exciting time to do this because we've had recent innovations in the ways that we can detect this heart rhythm disturbance called atrial fibrillation, as well as innovations in the drugs that are used to prevent stroke in this condition. And I think together with these two streams of innovation, as well as the generous support of government and industrial partners with the CSPIN project, I think we are highly likely to succeed over the next 5 to 10 years to develop new therapies that will not only prevent stroke, but can do so in a broad and cost-effective way. So the Canadian Stroke Prevention Intervention Network is funding 8 pilot and vanguard trials at its inception in 2013. And over the course of the next 4 to 5 years, we hope to complete these studies, not only the pilot and vanguard work, but also, in many cases, the definitive trials. And the CSPIN network is really a collaboration of strong investigators from across Canada, and these 8 trials really highlight the fact that this is a truly national initiative. We have a pulse screening program looking at a variety of simple and innovative technologies to screen for atrial fibrillation in a variety of populations, including patients coming to their family physician, individuals going to a pharmacy, as well as simply at-risk patients residing at home. And this project is being led by groups in Calgary, led by Russell Quinn, as well as Edmonton, led by Dr. Rupinder Sandhu, and individuals at the University of Toronto, specifically Noah Ivers and David Gladstone. And this is just a great example of how expertise in 3 different areas of Canada, as well as expertise here at Population Health Research Institute, have come together to take on a very large trial which will involve nearly 10,000 patients to complete a project which may lead to innovative strategies to identify patients with atrial fibrillation, which is particularly important now that we have highly effective therapies to prevent stroke once these patients are identified. On the other side of the country, we have randomized trials based in Ottawa and Toronto, as well as Montreal. The Montreal group, led by Lena Rivard and Mero Tolajic, is doing a trial called the Brain AF trial. And this trial is looking at younger patients without cardiovascular disease who have atrial fibrillation. These patients, according to Canadian guidelines, would not be recommended for oral anticoagulant therapy, and as their stroke risk is quite low. However, we do know that over long term, patients with atrial fibrillation may be at increased risk of cognitive decline, and the hypothesis of this trial is if patients are treated with safe and effective anticoagulant medications earlier in life, that this may prevent or retard the development of cognitive decline later in their life. The OCEAN trial, which is being co-led by our colleagues in Ottawa, David Burney, and Toronto, Atul Verma, is looking at a very recent dilemma in the management of patients with atrial fibrillation, and that is what to do with their anticoagulant therapy after they've had successful catheter ablation of their arrhythmia. We used to believe that elimination of the arrhythmia with drugs would relieve the stroke risk, when in fact Canadian research done in Montreal and Calgary subsequently proved this not to be the case. Now we are in an era where we have more effective therapies to suppress atrial fibrillation, that being catheter ablation, and the question has again surfaced: if we eliminate the arrhythmia with a procedure, does the stroke risk go away, and can the patients safely come off their anticoagulants? And this is a dilemma for which we have no answer, and for which OCEAN, using innovative study design and technology, will attempt to answer. The OCEAN trial will include patients who have had a successful ablation, and then patients will be randomly assigned to come off or stay on their blood thinning medications and followed forward to look for the development of stroke, including silent stroke detected on routine MRI scanning done as part of the trial. And then finally, we have a trial called Artesia, which is a trial of anticoagulant therapy in pacemaker and defibrillator patients which have short episodes of atrial fibrillation picked up by their device. Now, in our earlier ASSERT trial, we showed that these episodes were in fact associated with an increased risk of stroke. However, what remains unanswered is if the use of modern blood thinning medications can prevent this risk. And so, starting in the fall, nearly 4,000 patients worldwide with pacemakers and defibrillators who have short episodes of arrhythmias will be randomly assigned in this trial coordinated out of Hamilton to receive a new blood thinner or aspirin to see which strategy is superior for stroke prevention. One of the other important aspects of CSPIN is to focus on the development and nurturing of young investigators, and this is key. We have had 10 to 20 years of great success in Canada with research in this area. However, we need to focus on developing and nurturing the next generation of researchers in this field. And CSPIN is going to contribute over $3 million, not only to fund fellows and trainees, but also to help support junior investigators in their first 5 years of academic practice where they need support the most. And support would come in the form of operational grants to help them start early pilot work, but also salary support so they can protect time to spend on research and make sure they achieve success early on.